From humble beginnings with a troubled childhood and an abusive stepfather, to meeting his actual father at the age of 12, to graduating college, getting into the family business in 1969, nice, helping his dad grow the company, even promoting some shows early on, becoming the play-by-play announcer in 1971 and holding that position until November of 1997 when Brett screwed Brett, ha ha ha. And then he would purchase the company with company profits from his father, who was in ailing health at the time, and would take it nationwide and worldwide through various shady business practices. And why would you be upset that I tried to buy your territory and bought your TV and took your talent? It's just business. Such good shit, pal. Ha ha ha. And then he would continue to get through various scandals, pay off a police chief to keep Jimmy Snuka employed, and then he would go through the 90s, go through the war with Ted Turner. He would take the company public in 1999, stock options and a whole bunch of stuff, Birdemic approved, and then he would just continue to grow WWE into the national powerhouse that it is, and finally would be ousted from power just a few days before recording this. And now he's facing possible embezzlement charges. Money can buy you a lot of things, but it can't get you away from facing karma. And I ain't talking about Yoshihashi's finisher. Well, Vince McMahon has certainly had an up and down, all-around sports entertainment work life, hasn't he? Now let's see what fucking happens in this next phase of his life. But nevertheless, I'm John Redland with my real honest thoughts on the good, the bad, and the Vince Part 1. This is going to be at least a 4-part series because while I was at work and while it was slow, I decided I'm just going to write some notes down. I'm going to look, up facts about Vince, from his early life, getting into the business and all that. And this is definitely going to be a deep dive. Now, I'm just a fan at the end of the day. I don't have any idea about the inner workings of WWE, but from shoot interviews and just stuff we've seen with our fucking eyes, we can ascertain that Vince McMahon has done a lot of good for wrestling, or sports entertainment, pal. He's also done a lot of bad. He's also kind of an absolute piece of shit, in all honesty. But then again, given his association with the now former president, Donald Trump, is it really that fucking shocking? Hell, Jim Cornette even said that Vince McMahon is a smarter, more articulate Trump, and you would have thought that Vince McMahon could have been smarter with his money and maybe not gotten caught embezzling money. Vince, you had more money than 5 federal governments put together, but whatever, he couldn't keep it in his pants, couldn't stop dipping his pen in company ink, passed the paralegal around like a toy to Johnny Ace, and there's other charges. More stuff. This is an entirely fluid situation. And I do mean fluid situation. Probably should have chosen other words, but there's a lot of fucking shit to dive into. With that long intro, yep, let's talk about Vince McMahon's early life. So, he was born Vinnie Lupton. Vinnie Lupton. I'm sorry. I don't know why that's funny to me. But he didn't know his father. His mother dated other guys. He had a bad, abusive stepfather. Even was quoted as saying that, it's a shame he didn't live long enough so he could kill him. He would have liked that. Look, for all that I don't like about Vince and for all that I'm going to talk about in this and other installments, no child deserves to be abused by any parent or any person. No. That's bullshit. And if you're going to step up and you're going to be a stepfather or stepmother, you need to take care of those kids as if they're your own. And that's fucking horseshit that Vince had to deal with that. While his dad was growing Capital Wrestling, or the CWC, Capital Wrestling Corporation, I believe is what it was, and running in small arenas and also running in some big arenas sometimes, even though there were times where the garden was dark because of various things that had happened, Vince McMahon Sr. still grew the business tremendously. Now, obviously, people like Bruno Sammartino were the big factor as to why they got such, a prominent position, why they were seen as the Mecca, because they were originally paired with the NWA. Well, they were part of the NWA, and then the AWA split off, the WWF at the time, Worldwide Wrestling Federation, split off, and they made their own champion. It was Buddy Rogers, and then it ended up being Bruno Sammartino. And Vince met his father at age 12. Now, Vince was born in the mid-40s. So, if you think about it, Vince McMahon, he's older than the dirt. When he was in school, he didn't have history, so what does that say about his father? But his father was well respected as a promoter. He would always take care of people. He ran a tight ship, but he was respected. And I do always say that whenever there's a documentary with footage of his dad actually talking, that's something. Now, Vince McMahon did want to become a wrestler. His dad refused. And I'm assuming he probably didn't have the best relationship with his father initially, but then eventually that grew. He did graduate from East Carolina University with a business degree. I think he tried to do some traveling salesman stuff. That didn't work. And you would think as good of a salesman as Vince can be, as persuasive as he could be, that would have certainly been interesting to see Vince McMahon try to be a traveling salesman. He's like, shake hands with Schlocko. Handle first, handle first, handle first. Longtime Simpsons fans are dying in the comments right now. So, he debuted for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation in 1969. Nice. And as ringside announcer. And he was just doing stuff. It is cool to see the old footage and just Vince McMahon, even though he's pretty big at that point, like he was still, he still looked like a normal human being before he just got insanely jacked and absolutely insane, but he was more professional. It was a sports-based feel. He did deliver things well and everything, interviewing people. I always laugh at the one clip. I think it was Freddie Blassie out there mocking Andre the Giant, who broke his foot, and Killer Khan came out. I believe it was Killer Khan, came out and swung the crutch and nearly hit Vince in the head. Vince was hot. Vince was like ready to go after Killer Khan, who's a tough son of a bitch in his own life, or in his own right, or at least was. I think Killer Khan passed away, but never, if he didn't, I apologize for saying that, but Killer Khan, hell of a town. That clip always makes me laugh. He was given a chance to promote small cards in Maine in 1971. His first chance to be a promoter because they had little spot areas that they would run. And let's be perfectly honest, in Maine, there isn't a lot of shit going on, at least from what I hear. Maine is basically like the Washington state of the East Coast. I mean, we're all the way up where we are on the West Coast. They're all the way up where they are. And he was given a chance to promote that. And I don't remember if it was a Vince McMahon documentary or what it was, but he replaced a guy named Ray Morgan, who I want to say tried to hold up Vince Sr. for more money. And Vince McMahon, and he was standing there, and Vince Sr. just fired him. Said, "Hey, get out. I don't want you here." And he had like quarters that he would just clink in his hand. Just do that. And he looked at his son and said, "You're going to be the ring announcer." And Vince Jr. like, "I've never done anything like that in my life. No problem. You've been on TV before. You've been doing this. Do it. Just go do it." I will say that Vince McMahon, as far as being a ring announcer, he was fine. As an interviewer, he was fine. I liked him as a play-by-play guy. Until he got to like the 90s when he would say stuff like when Mabel tossed out Yokozuna, he would say, "And there you see Yokozuna being dumped unceremoniously out of the ring by Yokozuna." Or it actually was Mabel being dumped out. But nevertheless, I'm like, here you see Yokozuna be dumped unceremoniously out. I don't know why that always makes me laugh. It just does. After replacing Ray Morgan, he would hold that spot until Survivor Series 1997. He wouldn't call every single show, but often he, like on the pay-per-views, he wouldn't really call all that action. He did help his dad get more TV syndication because at that point, TV syndication was the big market. WTBS, Ted Turner starred with, he said the Braves, Andy Griffith, and wrestling grew his channel, grew his network, made his network, and they did. WTBS had it had a version of Georgia Championship Wrestling. Jim Crockett Promotions got on there. There was that kind of stuff. AWA had tremendous TV syndication. Other companies were getting into TV syndication, especially by the late 70s, early 80s. World Class Championship Wrestling, I don't remember what they were called. Big Time Wrestling? Was it Big Time Wrestling or was that Houston? Nevertheless, they were getting more into the stuff. Like, they were getting their TV syndication. They had big TV. They had their own superstation. Vince McMahon was making his TV syndication deals and also understanding the business and everything and looking for a way to maybe start his own company, possibly buy the WWF. Because Vince Jr. even tried, and see, I'm saying some positives here, he tried to maybe get Vince Sr., his dad, to relent on the fact that Superstar Billy Graham should have lost the championship to Bob Backlund because Vince Sr. wanted an All-American boy. And it's nothing against Bob Backlund. And plenty against Superstar Billy Graham because he's a fucking goddamn hypocrite and an idiot. But at that time, they should have kept the title on Billy Graham, who couldn't work a goddamn lick to save his fucking life. And should have never gotten that liver to get a second chance at life given what he's done with it. Nevertheless, Billy Graham could have actually possibly turned face. Backlund could have become champion in 6 months to a year, but Billy Graham would have been able to hold. I think he only held it for 10 months. They said, it was going to be a year and a half, and he lost it after 10 months, if I remember the timeline correctly. So Bob Backlund is champion for 5.5 years by that point. He continues to be champion. Other people get brought in. Jimmy Snuka explodes. All this stuff is happening. Bruno Sammartino had come back in 73 to 77 and then would wrestle occasionally, but wanted to spend more time with his family. And not help David Sammartino get into the business. Ooh, oh boy. Yeah, that was something. But in 1979, sometime in that year, Vince and Linda, who were married by this point, back when Linda had two eyes, they could look straight ahead. There will be some shots at Linda at some point, by the way. They founded Titan Sports. So there you go. Titan Sports Entertainment, pal. And that was absorbed into WWF. And then, and I don't remember the exact timeline, but I know it was sometime in 1982, they were making millions and millions of dollars. I mean, Titan Sports might have promoted car. He was in the Cape Cod Coliseum, just paying the mortgages and running shows and stuff like that, and using money to build his empire, his Vince Pyre, as it were. And it was, again, incorporated in WWF, or WWF in 1980. And sometime in 80, it was like a year, he had to pay these quarterly installments of, I think it was $1 million, to buy out Vince Sr. and other partners, Arnold Scullin, Gorilla Monsoon. I'm sure there were a couple others. I don't remember. I do apologize for that. But I know Monsoon and Arnold Scullin were a couple of them. And then Vince purchased control of the company from his father. His father, who I believe died, I don't remember his cancer. I know he died at the age of 66, 67. Because he wanted to get out of wrestling because he had grown it. But it's like, okay, I'm not feeling well. I don't really have the energy to do this. I have the passion for it. Let's just do this. It was basically a sweet deal. I mean, it's a sweet fucking deal for Vince McMahon to get the control of the company. And then he had the idea to take it more national and international instead of just in the Northeast. And there was always a territorial thing. You stay in your place. But Vince Sr. even called other people. Eddie Graham, Jerry Jarrett, Vern Gagne, anybody that he respected. And basically Sam Muchnick, I'm sure. Actually, Sam Muchnick might have retired already by the time that Vince McMahon got control of the WWF. Because Sam, I believe, retired in early 82. So it might have been right around that time. But nevertheless, Vince McMahon wanted to take his company national, wanted to do all this stuff. Vince then decided to do a whole bunch of shady tactics. I will be talking about some of those in due course. But the company, people make it like, oh, Vince McMahon worked so hard. I'm not saying that it's easy to draw money in wrestling. Fuck, I have seen some indie shows here and everywhere where it's like they basically are running in a fucking broom closet. That's not knocking. That's just saying that, wrestling back then, if you were smart, you could make money hand over fist, especially if you were the promoter. That was where the money was. That's where the money lied. That's where the power was. The power inside. I have the power. Ha ha ha. But imagine Vince McMahon as He-Man. McMahon. Missed opportunity there. They split from the NWA for good in 1983. They previously split in 1963 before joining in 1971. Kind of like a little co-promotion thing. That's why you would sometimes get Bob Backlund versus Harley Race. That's why you would get other champions, people appearing. Ric Flair would even appear. That's why Dusty Rhodes, who worked for Eddie Graham in Florida Championship Wrestling from Florida. Dusty had a tremendous feud with superstar Billy Graham, so there was a camaraderie there. And there was respect that Vince Jr. had for other promoters, Eddie Graham in particular, especially for Florida, the no state income tax and everything and all that. So they continued to, grow and grow. And I'll talk about the shady business. I'm going to bounce around a little bit in this timeline because 83 is really where everything just got insane. He went after other territories, went after their TV, went after the stuff, make them deal with Mike LaBelle out in California, and then didn't follow through on too many of the payments. Mike LaBelle tried to sue him. That didn't fucking work because if you just have a handshake fucking agreement, that really doesn't hold up in court. And also Vince had more money. Mike LaBelle, the LA territory by that point was dead. Piper and Chavo Guerrero Sr. were about the only thing going on, and that was a few years prior. So the LA territory just was done. Vince wanted to do that. Vince bought them out, made a deal with them, but going for TV, going for talent, just hoarding people, just making them offers and everything. Money that he did have, income that he would have, but he was bound, determined to swallow up people and overtake. Yes, the territories to an extent maybe need to change. Some aged out, the Sheiks, Bruisers, Dick the Bruiser, Bruise the Dicker, as it were. I always say it both ways because it's funny. But Joe Blanchard's Southwest Championship Wrestling in San Antonio, they were in USA. They had a lot of debts, which would be an understatement. I hope that maybe somebody does an entire biography on Southwest Championship Wrestling, because Joe Blanchard has some good ideas, and some of the Southwest TV or events that I've seen weren't bad, but the stuff that's on tape, you can tell that even by then the territory is going down. He paid their debts, got on USA. So there you go. He tries to buy he tries to go after the Von Erichs as they're exploding. Fritz refuses. Maybe talks about buying them, and then Fritz talks about maybe a merger, and Vince says no. He's doing his All-Star Wrestling show and featuring tapes from various territories. And I'm using this to get you guys over, but it was his Christmas list. He would get Junkyard Dog. He eventually would get the Von Erichs. Von Erichs are about the only people that he didn't get. He would get people from the AWA. Speaking of the AWA, he would try to make a purchase of them in 1983. Right after Super Sunday 83, when Vern pretty much pissed the fans off to the point that they were rioting because he didn't give Hogan the fucking belt because he wanted to be greedy. Because Vern Gagne, for all his great things, was really fucking greedy at the worst time. Vince McMahon was blown off, or Vince McMahon kind of blew them off. I don't negotiate. And then, speaking of 1983, the shady business practices, all that. There are others too. There are others. Stampede Wrestling purchase, but I'll talk about that in a minute. The Jimmy Snuka, Nancy Argentino situation. Dark Side of the Ring explained some of it, didn't explain a lot of it. He basically, because Snuka was his top star, Snuka was more popular than Bob Backlund. He had exploded in popularity. He was having that feud with Don Morocco that was getting really goddamn hot. He paid off the police chief. Don't know how much money. Don't know. He went in with a briefcase and then told Jimmy, you don't have to worry about anything anymore. You won't hear anything. And he didn't for a number of years. Fuck Jimmy Snuka, by the way. I'm glad he's dead. He deserved to spend the rest of his life in jail. Never deserved another dime from wrestling. Claimed bankruptcy so he wouldn't have to pay the goddamn family. Fucking piece of shit. And he murdered her. He fucking murdered her. Because he beat her. Because he was a goddamn cokehead and a prick. And a piece of shit. I can't even insult people properly because I'm so goddamn fired up about that. She was an innocent victim in this whole goddamn thing, and he used his power and his roided up physique and his goddamn coke binges, to threaten the sisters and also to beat the shit out of Nancy to the point where she died. And Vince McMahon, instead of cutting ties, paid off the police chief. And then tried to pay off Nancy Argentino's family. Would $25,000, help you feel better? To buy their silence. A kid is worth more than $25,000, even unless they're Vince's kids, and then he'll just send Shane out wherever the fuck. But tried to pay off Nancy's family, and they blew him off. So yeah, that gives you an idea of just what Vince was like. But there's more, for good and bad, and Vince. So, Black Saturday, Georgia Championship Wrestling slot. He bought the Briscoe shares for the WTBS slot. And it was for Georgia Championship Wrestling, Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. Jim Crockett was kicked off. That's it. So because he was on WTBS, they gave Ole an early time slot on Saturdays with a version of Georgia Championship Wrestling, but it didn't exactly work. I might be mixing up the names a little bit. I do apologize on that. Fans of Georgia Championship Wrestling, this is from various shoot interviews from Jim Cornette's podcast. And I'm sure letters are even floating around out there. I'm sure there's even audio of some calls like, where is our quote unquote Gordon Championship Wrestling? We don't want this New York bullshit here. Because Vince McMahon tried to break into the market. He was on USA Network and their affiliates. He was on WTBS. So he's on the two big fucking cable networks because, for those that don't know, back in the 80s, cable was getting, was exploding, but cable wasn't exactly around, in the biggest, in like the biggest form like it is now. Now where we're satellite streaming and all that stuff and everything. Back in the early 80s and even the late 80s, there were cable networks popping up. MTV popped up and other things. But being on both big cable networks, that's a big fucking deal. The fans in the South said, bullshit, we don't want to fucking see this. What the fuck are you doing, Vince? This isn't wrestling. We will go see the good stuff from Charlotte or Georgia. Get this shit out of here. And he was pissed. Vince was pissed. An entire, basically, quarter or third of the goddamn country said, no, we don't fucking want you here. He couldn't draw anywhere there. Well, I mean, St. Louis he could, but St. Louis is more, as you get like away from like the Carolinas and Virginias and Florida and stuff like that. And even though he would draw in Florida, Carolinas, Virginias, and that kind of stuff, and even Crockett would go up into the Northeast as far as Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Boston, and other areas. He would draw some big gates. So the Crockett Promotions, Vince McMahon rivalry is something that really everybody just fucking, loved back then. That was the real war, in my opinion. Not the WCW versus WWE, or WWF at the time, in the mid-90s to very early 2000s, 99, 2000, get the cool shoe shine. Da-da-da-da-da. But anyway, boy, that was a terrible rendition of that Gorilla song. He had a falling out with Ted. And that deal went up in smoke. Meanwhile, he's making a deal with Stu Hart for Stampede Wrestling. I buy you, you go away. He was going to make $100,000 installment payments for the next 10 years. And relented on, said, nah, I'm not going to do that after like a year or two. Might even been a year. Because Bruce started up Stampede Wrestling, or a variation of it. And that's why Vince used the excuse. But he also got, Brett, Neidhart, the Bulldogs. He got them jobs. I mean, there may have been a couple others, but those were the main one. And Stu also, Helen wanted him to get out of wrestling, so there you go. Back to Crockett Promotions. They paid him $1 million for the time slot. Now, mind you, at this point, Crockett needed that time slot because of Starrcade, even though this happened in 84, so they already had the first Starrcade. They needed that to promote their big events, stuff like that, so they would get it for Starrcade 1984, and then they would get that. But what was Vince trying to run? What was Vince trying to set up in late 84 into 85? WrestleMania. The first ever WrestleMania. And he used that $1 million and then some. He made a deal with Antonio Inoki to run some shows and everything and use that. And that's why Antonio Inoki at one point won a championship, I believe, from Bob Backlund that wasn't recognized. It was recognized in Japan, not by WWE. Because Bob Backlund had an uninterrupted 2,000 plus day reign. I think it was 2,000 days. Might have been 5 years. Yeah, it was over 2,000 days. But Vince used the Crockett money plus a little bit extra to fund the first WrestleMania. Then the Rock and Wrestling Connection. All this stuff is happening while he's trying to make the deal to buy Verne and World Class and all that. Other territories are exploding at this point, but he gets Hogan. He gets Hogan at the end of 83 into 84. That was a fucking catalyst. He couldn't rely on Jimmy Snuka. Jimmy Snuka kept coking himself out of his goddamn mind. It was some tour of the Middle East or whatever, Istanbul or something like that, where and I don't remember the exact country, I apologize, but he had coke all over his goddamn body. Because he was a piece of shit, a cokehead, and a murderer. Did I say that already? So he had to get other people. Bob Backlund was a champion. Bob Backlund lost to the Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik, who had worked in AWA and worked at other places, and Iron Sheik was well respected, even if he was insane, and still is. Vince got Hogan basically after the whole thing happened with the AWA, and he didn't win the title from Bockwinkel, disputed finish, and would still compete and everything. Of course, Greg Gagne claims that Verne was always good to him. And I'm not saying that Verne didn't pay Hogan well, but Verne also was trying to get too much of a piece of the pie. Sold a bunch of Hogan merch while Hogan was on tour in Japan, didn't give him his cut. So that, in addition to other things, Hogan had told the story. He sat in a hotel room, booking finishes with Bockwinkel and Verne, a tour, with him and Bockwinkel in steel cages. But then Vince, I want to say, either met him in the U.S. or flew over to Japan while Hogan was on tour in Japan, talked to him a bit, but then negotiated with him, I think back in the States, and basically said, come here. Come here, I will make you more money. The promise of more money than you've ever made. Of course, Vince will claim that he didn't remember what he said to Hogan, but then he gets Hogan. He gets Ventura. Dr. D. David Schultz, who should have slapped John Stossel to the point John Stossel's jaw flew off and that he was never able to do anything. And maybe his daughter then would have been able to have a real man as a father in her life. But nevertheless, Dr. D. David Schultz, Jesse Ventura, Tito Santana went there. Various other people went there. So many talents went there. AWA still had a core of people, but Vince basically said to Verne, I'm smarter than you, damn it. So he basically tore the heart out of the AWA by taking Hogan. Because they had put everything into Hogan, but they hadn't put everything into Hogan. Because Verne was greedy. Hogan shows up, helping Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund was gone from the company very soon after. Hogan beats the Iron Sheik, January 23rd, 1984, and there it explodes. Now, did they draw every single place? No, but they were doing the nutty touring schedule, which I'll talk about in part 2. But the first WrestleMania, this is where I'm going to end up wrapping up. But even in 1984, I believe, or 83, 84, when he made that deal with Inoki, somewhere around that, the Bulldogs left. They went to All Japan. And he had to go talk to Giant Baba, who was the promoter of All Japan at the time. Inoki and him were rivals. They were rival companies. And he had to be basically filmed on the cover trying to negotiate to get the Bulldogs back there. Yes, they could have shots, but he wanted them in his company. Inoki was probably pissed. I don't blame him. Also, I'm amazed they could get Giant Baba's face in the goddamn shot. They both had huge faces. Nevertheless, the first WrestleMania kicks off, months early, with Roddy Piper coming in, doing the feud with Snuka, Coconut, all that stuff. Getting Cyndi Lauper involved. Captain Lou Albano being on the Girls Just Want to Have Fun video. Still fucking iconic. Do the Mario all together now. Wait, that was years later. Do you, talk about this in the Piper documentary. Do you think you can kick Cyndi Lauper and not hurt her? Yeah, I can kick her and not hurt her. I can put her face, my fist through her face. What's your point? I want you to kick Cyndi Lauper. And he did. And then Mr. T got involved. Mr. T was a virtual unknown, but Rocky 3 helped him explode. Hogan was already doing well. That movie role did help him. And he was already exploding in Japan. Mr. T got the A-team out of this, so he was a big goddamn celebrity. He came in. Roddy Piper was not a fan of his. I believe they made peace before Piper died, at least I hope so. And other celebrities, Billy Martin, Liberace, so many. Muhammad Ali was a special guest referee. Unfortunately, I believe his Parkinson's or something close to it was starting to affect him, so he was having the unfortunate body shakes. Muhammad Ali truly one of the best to ever do it, as far as boxing. But Mania 1 was a big goddamn deal. He had leveraged everything there. If Mania 1 wasn't successful, it's like, bring everything, everybody bring it, everybody do whatever. You get, these celebrities need to hit, the wrestling needs to hit, all this pomp and circumstance needs to fucking hit, or we are fucked. Well, we're talking about them now still, so they weren't fucked there. They had closed circuit stuff in various movie theaters. It was a smashing success. Yeah, you could argue that he just cherry-picked talents from various other places and everything and basically just utilized them on a grander stage. But basically what ended up happening with Vince is WrestleMania was a fucking big success. It was a fucking big-ass success. Tons of money they had made, and they were off to the races at that point. And then finally, to wrap that up, just before the first Starrcade, just to show you how much he tried to stick with Jim Crockett Promotions, he tried to get Harley Race, who was the NWA champion at the time, to no-show Starrcade 83. And then tried to tackle him, apparently, in the bathroom. You can't tackle somebody in a restaurant, you have to do it in the bathroom. And Harley Race, I don't care if Harley Race basically just had no knees at that point. Why would you do that to Harley Race? The man survived getting stabbed, he survived getting shot, he survived a car accident that unfortunately killed his wife and child. Why would you do that to a man that is noted for being one of the toughest sons of bitches, even in his diminished condition by that point? And he was still legit tough. What the fuck? Vince was fearless and stupid. And tried to tackle Harley Race, and it didn't fucking work. So there you go. I'm going to leave it off right there, because I got some scandals and other shit to dive into in part 2, but boy, oh boy, a lot of fun to talk about this Vince McMahon stuff. Let me know your thoughts on this stuff so far in the comments, please. Is there anything I missed in this time period? Let's not talk about anything past 1985. That's going to be covered a little bit later. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.